Hi everyone, this is Fahim Niaz. I'm the product manager for Anime Studio. I'm very happy that you guys have taken the time out of your busy day to join us today. And I wanted to give you a little brief overview with respect to Anime Studio. So Anime Studio is the complete animation tool for professionals and digital artists. I believe the majority of you are probably already users of Anime Studio. For those who are new, there are two versions of the product. One is the debut version and the other version is the pro version. If you'd like some more information on Anime Studio, you can definitely check it out on our website at anime.smithmicro.com. So today's webinar is about scripting, which is more or less a specific tool or feature that's capable of being used in the pro version of the product. We will be going through a webinar that will be hosted by Wes Fowler, and Wes is definitely somebody that's got a lot of experience with scripting, and I'll give you guys a little bit of a background on him as well. So before we begin the webinar, I did want to go over a few housekeeping items just so that everyone was aware of the experience that they'll be going through with the webinar. So the first thing I wanted to mention was that everyone, as far as participants are concerned, will be muted except for the panelists. There are 3 panelists on this webinar: myself, Wes, and as well as Michi, who is hosting the actual webinar. If you have any questions, please make sure to use the Q&A window and make sure to fire questions away as soon as possible. That way we have a bunch of questions that Wes can handle during the webinar, or if there's time at the end, he'll be able to handle those at the end and be able to answer those. I will be reading out the questions to him, and he will basically verbalize the response. We will be recording this webinar, as was mentioned earlier, and it will be about a week or so before it's available on our website, so stay tuned for that as well. And if there are any technical issues, please pardon us. This is WebEx. Once in a while, there are some issues that do occur with the system. So I'd like to give you guys a little bit of a background on Wes Fowler. So Wes and I have communicated on several occasions, and we have a good relationship, and we're good friends. He's also part of the Anime Studio beta team, so he is able to give a lot of input as far as the direction of the product is concerned. So he's extremely knowledgeable in all areas of Anime Studio, as I mentioned, and especially when it comes to scripting. He's one of the few people that really understands the scripting aspect of Anime Studio really well. He's an avid contributor on the Lost Marble forum, and he's a key moderator on the Animators forum. And he's, you know, for more info on Wes, you can definitely go in to get more info on him, and his scripts are definitely available on there too. He's also mentioned to us that all contributing members on the Animators forums, 50 posts or so, gain access to his scripts. So I definitely recommend checking out the Animators forum. With that, I'd like to pass over the ball to Wes.
Hi guys, Wes here. As Fahim said, I'm one of the 2 admins on the Animators forum. All my scripts you can access through the VIP scripting once you've contributed by posting 50 posts, whether they be questions, helping other people, whatever. We just like to, that's part of my contribution to keep this forum running, is to provide incentive for people to participate. Let's see. So first I want to cover what a script is. Anything in your tools palette is a script. And I'll show you what exactly those are here in a second. There's also, if you're on Pro, there's a scripts menu, which has menu scripts, which are all the same thing. What a script is, if I go into the Anime Studio program files, go into the tools, I can open up the add point tool. And as you can see, it's just a plain text file. And I have it opened up with Notepad 2. I use Notepad 2 for scripting because it has numbered lines so I can find stuff easy. Biggest thing about scripts being written in plain text is that you can if you understand Lua and the Anime Studio scripting interface, then you can pretty much read through them and see what they're doing. And even if you don't know those, you can still look through them and get some idea of where it's doing what. For example, you have a function on mouse down, and that handles whenever you click your mouse, whenever that button goes down, it activates all the code that follows in that function. There's also an on mouse moved and on mouse up, as well as on key down, and so on and so forth to handle what the user does and how the tool is to react to that. So there are several types of tools. One is tools you get, tools in the tool palette that you normally use, like your add point tool, freehand tool, and whatnot. There's also button scripts, like the insert text. When you press it, see it leaves the freehand tool selected, but it activates the text. And a button script is exactly the same as a menu script. So for third-party scripts, you won't have this scripts menu entry if you're on Anime Studio Debut. But if you find a third-party script that says it's a menu script, you can still turn it into a button script and use it in your tool palette, even though you don't have the scripts menu to put it in. And whenever you do that, it's just you open the tool list, and you just have to, let's see, I can go to one that's already included. You just have to put a line like this that claims it as a button, so it'll act as a button for a menu script to work in your tool window. Okay, another script I'll show you real quick. Another type of script, you have tools, buttons that are both on your tool window. You have your script menu, your menu scripts if you're on Anime Studio Pro. You also have what's called layer scripts. If you open up the layer settings of any layer, you have an entry down here called embedded script file. If you check that, it asks you for the layer script to attach to that layer that will control parameters on that layer. Let me go ahead and add one in here so I can show you generally what a layer script does. Layer scripts basically do things that you need to control as the timeline's playing, but that Anime Studio doesn't natively do with its default tools. Let's see, for example, I put mesh instance, which it just will take, I've set up in this layer, I'll duplicate this layer and rename it the same as that layer with a .dup for duplicate extension on the layer name. And I'll offset the layer so you can see what this does. So if with layer script attached to this, to both layers, if I go to my original layer, then anything I do to this layer as far as point motion will be copied over. There's other things, obviously I shifted off I translated the duplicate layer, so that's not handled, and this version pretty much only handles point motion. So everything else between the two layers is independent. But any point motion you do on that layer will be translated to this one, and this one is locked where you cannot do point motion on it because it's a slave to the original layer. So that's what some of the things your layer scripts do. The only other type of script there is what's called a utility script. Utilities are something that the user doesn't have to worry about except when they're installing scripts. Scripts will have, instructions on what to install where. There's already some default LM utilities, and I'm using this utility here for some of my tools. These are just routines that the script writer will use a lot, usually across several tools, so it's handy to be able to call them from a centralized location. Okay, so now I want to get into, everybody can play with all the tools that come with Anime Studio already, all the scripts that are already on there. So what I want to do is do a demonstration of different third-party tools, and I'll cover ones that I've written myself to show you the power of what scripting can do in Anime Studio, why you might want to install third-party scripts, why you might want to even learn how to write scripts of your own. Let's see. Let me open up. Okay, here's a script that I want to show you. Well, first let me show you another one. Okay, first script I want to show you is just a script I made that's a frame-by-frame button script. What it does is I create a shape or shapes, move down the timeline, and hit the script. It takes that shape and hides it, and then I can draw, if I have the drawing tools enabled for frames other than frame 0. I can draw, move down the timeline, hide all those, draw more down the timeline, hide all those. And then basically what you get is a frame-by-frame breakup of that sphere I just drew. Now with that tool, I have created a simple splash animation. Which has a drop coming down, which you can't really see all too well, and it has a splash with droplets that go off into the water. Reason I made this is because I wanted to show you another tool I did. I did another button script on request of a user who was wanting to get frame-by-frame animation from a different program that didn't give you a transparent background on it. So he wanted to be able to import the frames and have a transparent background. So this script, which is an image sequence script, it allows me to, and I already have an image sequence I set up of this exact same drop animation. And I'll show you, as you can see, the backgrounds are blue throughout it. So I'll go, and it doesn't matter which image I select, and it will import the whole thing in a switch layer as a frame-by-frame animation. So I'll turn off that drop so you can see the imported animation in a switch layer, and that's with just a PNG image sequence. And as you can see, if I turn off the background, it actually does have transparency because I used the image masking tool. I used it in this script to automatically take the top right-hand corner and use that color to mask out that color throughout the image. And it works as long as I'm not blocking it off with any line that completely cuts off that corner from the rest of the image. And as you can see with the drop there, since I've imported it in, it has all my effects, so you can actually see it. Whereas the original version, if it was playing, you can't actually see the shape effect on the drop. Okay. Another tool which I wrote quite some time ago was a create shape tool. And the options it has are much like I think it was introduced in 7, the paint bucket tool now has it to where you can select stroke, fill, or both. Earlier I created this tool which allows me to select what properties I want to create with. So that's a fill only shape, and then I can do an outline only shape. Or I can just do both. Let's see. Okay. I have also a color picker I've made, which of course you can pick color off of anywhere on your screen. The native color picker to AS, Anime Studio, only allows you to pick color from vector objects. This one allows me to pick color from anything on the screen, meaning I can pick the color of the border, I can pick the color in the swatch, I can even pick the color of this check mark here. What that allows us to do, I'll go ahead and open up an image out of the library. Let's scale that down so we can get more of it in the picture. Okay, so what that allows me to do is I can go in here and actually select colors from an image, which you can't natively do in Anime Studio. Another thing I can do, if I bring up an image external, I've got an image out here outside of Anime Studio, just in Windows Picture Viewer. If you click in the workspace in Anime Studio and drag it, you can actually drag it outside of the window and start picking from images that are not even in Anime Studio. So I can get this blue here, get the sand color, the grass color. So that really expands the functionality of a color picker in Anime Studio. Okay, another thing, another script I've written, Anime Studio has an autosave feature, but on the animators forum, several people requested that the autosave also work with being able to increment files. In other words, you've got, say you want to save over 5 files. The first one would be the name of your file number 1, name of your file number 2, so on and so forth. So what I did is I wrote a new autosave that allows you, if you check the autosave, you can select how many minutes it waits before it saves another version, and you can select how many copies it saves over. So if you want to have a lot of backup in case something goes wrong, you want to be able to go back and get a good copy of your project, you can put this up pretty much as high as you want it, 25, 50, however many copies you want it to increment over, and you'll have that many backup copies being auto-saved if you have auto-saved enabled as well. Let me turn those off. Okay. If you have, and I added a save button all on its own, so if you already have either autosave or increment well, it doesn't really matter if you have autosave, but if you have increment file saved enabled, then if you save here, it will go ahead and save it as an increment. Whereas if you save it from the file menu, it will just save it as the current name, and it will try to replace whatever file already has that name on your system. Let's see.
Hey there, Wes.
Yes.
I had a question from a participant, and they wanted to know if you could show onion skins with your frame-by-frame script.
Yes. I'll open up that file I had just a second ago.
Perfect. In the meantime, I'll ask the participants that would like to ask questions. Please do so. That way I can ask Wes as he's demonstrating that particular script or that feature within Anime Studio. So thank you, guys.
Okay, for onion skin, I'll turn off the vectors so you can actually see. Well, that's actually a problem. That frame by frame doesn't actually allow you to show onion skin because, well, yeah, it does. It depends. All these vectors actually exist as they are drawn, where they are in the timeline. They actually exist like that on frame 0. It's just they're hidden on the timeline until you get to where they show up. Now, as far as animation parts go, as you can see, the drop here, this is the onion skin of the drop. If it's animating, then you can see that it actually, you actually can see your onion skin. If I place another onion skin, then you can see it's a little hard to see because of all the vectors that are overlapping. They're just not showing yet. But it actually does show the onion skin there. Really, this tool isn't made for heavy frame-by-frame usage where you would really need a whole lot of onion skin. And it is easy enough to actually use onion skin while you're using the tool. Say you've got a set onion skin for relative frames, that way it follows you at a certain distance. And say I do my frame by frame and add in more there. If I move down, then it depends on where my relative is set, but as you can see, it is showing the onion skin behind it as it disappears. Like I said, this isn't a full frame-by-frame tool. It's only pretty much for quick one-off special effects like splashes and stuff that needs to break apart. Nothing too complex. It's just something to fill the gap in Anime Studio between an actual frame-by-frame and what Anime Studio already does. Now I have a couple of examples of my Select Shape tool, which it's a Select Shape tool that allows you already have shape ordering you can do on frame 0 with the native Select Shape tool in Anime Studio. What this tool allows you to do is it uses a layer script and it allows you to actually animate shape sorting. I'll show you one real quick from scratch so you can see what it does. Change up some of these colors real quick so you can see the differences. Okay, now normally in Anime Studio with the normal Select Shape tool, You can, reorder them like this, all you like, but you can't do this animated down the timeline. If you wanted to do that, you'd have to put each shape on a separate layer and do layer sorting in the layers window. Sometimes that works real well, but say you have shapes that need to be connected. Let's say, like so. Let's see. Let me get rid of this shape just to make this a little simpler. Actually, let's do it like that there. I'll go ahead and create that shape. Well, let me try that again. There we go, select both. There we go. Go ahead and run that down to the bottom, give it a different color. Well, let's try that one more time. There we go. Now I got some colors that'll contrast. Okay, as you can see, that yellow shape goes underneath everything. Say you need a shape like this that are connected, but you still need to sort your shapes. Obviously, you can't do this with animated layer sorting because they would have to be on different layers, and you couldn't connect up the vectors like this. So what my new select shape tool does is I can enable animated sorting, and the first time I go to sort something, at least on Anime Studio 8 or newer, this tool also works on Anime Studio 6. You just have to embed the script yourself. And 8 new scripting function allows me to well, for some reason that didn't actually embed the script, so I'll just go to my scripts folder and embed it manually. And I have a layer script folder I add to my scripts folder, and that's just an easy place I find to store all of my scripts, all of my layer scripts. Okay, now okay. Okay, something something fishy is going on that I'm not used to, haven't seen before. So let me see if I can't set this up a little simpler. Okay. Okay, now we're working. I assume the problem there was maybe some of my shapes were somehow named, had the same name. This button here allows me to automatically rename all shapes so that they all have unique names, which is required for this tool. But now if I go down the timeline and start reorganizing these shapes, then as you can see, they are actually sorting as it plays. And I have a couple of examples I've done recently. Here's a walk cycle that I did, a front walk cycle that I used the shape sorting on. As you can see, the front walk is just a single vector layer, has everything on it, and the switch layer, which is what holds the shape sorting keyframes for the script. And as you can see, the stars, here I'll run through it slower, the stars go from in front of the character and then they go behind the character, as well as the character's hands moving from front to back as she walks. We've also done a turn animation with this character. And if we take a look at it, you can see the arm and shoulder are here in front of the torso, and then here they've moved behind the torso. As well as the bangs here start out in front of the face, and then they go behind the face. And if I deselect it, you'll see it's completely behind the face there. So animated shape sorting really allows you to much more freedom in getting things to interact in 3D and appear to be turning in 3D. I have another simple example of layer sorting used, and this is just 3 circles rotating around each other. Like I said, you'd have to use layer sorting. And as you can see, I don't even have a group in this file. I just have a single vector layer and the switch layer that controls the shape sorting. And as you can see, if I select that, these are the keyframes for the shape sorting. And these are the point animation keyframes that move the balls around in a circle. And I have here I've set up I've done an animation of a rotating cube, and as you can see, the shapes are not sorted. Go ahead and turn the vectors on. But anywhere on the timeline, I can go and sort it so it actually is the proper color showing on each side. As you can see here, I need to bring this forward. And then that I brought that forward too much. Well, it would help if I turned on animated. Okay. Now if we move forward, we can see we're going to need to bring that up to the top. And then we can see the blue's got to come up. And as you can see, I've done it so that as you're animating these, it actually switches back to the switch layer, even though you can still click on the vector layer. Every time you change the shape, it actually goes to the switch layer so you can see your keyframes. But even though you have the switch layer selected where you can see your keyframes, you can still keep pushing the arrow buttons to move that shape up and down. So you can see what you're doing as you're keeping track of where you're placing your keyframes.
Hey there, Wes. I have a question here.
Yes.
It says, how hard might it be to develop a script that will allow moving points or selected objects using the arrow keys or Alt Option keys plus the arrow keys?
Would you repeat that?
Sure. How hard might it be to develop a script that will allow moving points or selected objects using the arrow keys or a combination of Alt and the arrow keys?
I don't think I understand the question. Moving points like this with the arrow keys?
That's correct, yes.
Well, I believe there's already, if you hold Control and hit the arrows, there's already a nudge feature on the Translate Point tool. So see, I'm using the arrows right here, and you can see my mouse isn't moving. And that's your nudge tool by holding Control and your arrows to move your points around. So yes, you can move your points around with the arrows.
Okay. There's another question here, Wes, that asks, where would people be able to access some of your scripts? We mentioned this earlier on, but would you like to mention it again as far as where they could access your scripts?
Yeah. On animatorsforum.com. It's free to register. There's a lot of stuff that's available for anybody. You don't have to register to get access to a lot of stuff. Some things like members tutorials are available once you register, so that you can post. And VIP scripting requires people who have participated enough to post 50 posts, gain access to the VIP scripting, and inside that you'll find send scripts, which I go by send75 on both Animators Forum and the Lost Marble Forum. And then you can find, once you gain access by, just participating just means, asking questions. As the forum's just as active as people who ask questions. Nobody can answer your questions if somebody doesn't come on to post. So we consider that as much of a contribution to the forum as anything else. So once you've posted 50 posts, we consider that, that you're going to stick around for a while. And all my scripts I provide free as incentive to participate on our forum. And you can find all these scripts I have posted, and I have demos posted of how to use them, and you can ask any questions. I've even written a handful of scripts for people who made requests for script writing. The frame by frame, not the image sequence script, I wrote specifically because somebody made a request for that script, and I was able to figure out how to make it work the way they needed it to work for what they were trying to accomplish. I don't always do that, but if I have the time and it seems like a doable script that won't take, a year development to get it to figure out how to get it to work, then I'm more than happy to try, or at least give people pointers if they're trying to do scripting on their own.
Perfect. That's very generous of you, Wes. Did you want to chat a little bit about how someone can get started with scripting, and if they were interested in learning how to script for themselves?
Yes. Two things you'll need to know about scripting in Anime Studio is it uses what's called Lua as the interpreted language for the script writing syntax. You can go to lua.org and find the manual for 5.1, which is the version that Anime Studio 8 is currently using for Lua. There you'll find the manual that has everything you need to know, probably too much. It'll probably be information overload for people just getting started in scripting. But you can find, if you Google for Lua 5.1 tutorials, there are hundreds of them out there from a variety of skill levels. They go from basic all the way up to very, very advanced. But this is the lua.org is the basic manual that gives you all your references for what Lua can do and what kind of functions it includes and all that. Let's see. Aside from that, in starting with Anime Studio Pro 8 or Anime Studio 8.2, in your extra files folder, you'll actually find a zip of Lua scripting. I already have that unzipped here, and these are all the references for the current version of Anime Studio that you have. And first opening it up, this will look very odd and probably look like complete alien language to most people. If you have any experience with other interpreted languages or any kind of other programming, Lua is very easy to pick up. It shouldn't be any problem once you get the gist of it. The biggest problem is people familiarizing themselves with the Anime Studio scripting interface. And these are what provide you all the details on that. There's also an HTML document for it, which has these references, and these are very good because they include, descriptions of what all the functions, and this was written, probably before Anime Studio 5.6. It's probably even before 5.4 more. But up until then, it has descriptions of what every function in the scripting interface does. And you can see if you look through just regular tool scripts, the best way to start learning is just to take a script. Menu scripts are fairly simple. Layer scripts, not so much. Probably menu scripts are the best place to start. But taking any script, and you can see, you can start to try to figure out, okay, once you know a little bit about Lua, you can figure out, okay, like the if, then, and end, that's all Lua. But the Moho disable drawing tools, that's a function that's in the Anime Studio scripting interface. Like I said, some of those functions will be in the HTML with descriptions. but a lot of them, any of the newer ones will not. The newer ones will just be in this format here, which pretty much just gives you the function and what kind of value it returns. Where it says void, that means that doesn't return a value to use. It just accomplishes some task. Here, the refresh is to refresh the workspace whenever you've made any changes to it with the tool. And there's functions for anything that a tool already does, you have access to for writing scripts. And it just depends on your amount of creativity and ingenuity on how you use those to accomplish new things that Anime Studio doesn't do natively. So do we have any more questions?
Yes, absolutely. There's another question about the metadata ability and it giving you any new ideas. Have you had any new ideas from the metadata ability in Anime Studio?
Yeah, metadata will work really nice because right now you have on specific tools you have tool settings you can set that are remembered by the tool. For example, let's find a good one. Oh, for example, say these settings up here on my Create Shape tool, whether I'm creating both an outline and a fill, an outline only, a fill only, whether I have autofill or lasso select enabled. All these things are stored by the tool. So no matter what project you open up, it's always going to be whatever you last had it set on, that tool will open up and have that setting remembered. What metadata will allow us to do is to have custom settings for tools per specific projects. So we can get more creative with the type of tools we create because we can tailor them to be specified to certain projects instead of have to be just generalized tools that work with any project you open in Anime Studio. It can actually have new functionality that works specifically with however you have a specific project set up, and have data stored in the project, in that project file that tells the tool what it needs to do. That can do a whole lot of things, especially in layer scripts, where you need the certain data stored that the layer script can call to act as the timeline is playing. But you need to store it in the file so that it's not in the layer script or in a tool that would try to compete with any other project file you open up.
Okay. I do have another question. I think this is more of a camera question, but I'll still ask you. One of the participants wants to know if there's a way to script and actually go into an object, preferably like a 3D object, like a 3D home. Is it possible to go inside it? I feel like this is more of a camera-based question, but I don't know. Is this something that you can answer, Wes?
Yeah. I think something like that would pretty much run into a limitation with Anime Studio software on how it handles 3D objects. Scripting, there is no scripting interface that would really allow you to do anything new with 3D objects that Anime Studio doesn't do natively. So no, there's nothing new that, as far as interacting with 3D objects, that you could really do with the scripting right now. Of course, things are added to the scripting fairly regularly. So down the road, who knows? But right now, with actual 3D objects, you can only do what Anime Studio can already do on its own.
Okay, thank you. Another question is in reference to the existing scripts that come with Anime Studio Pro. Which one's your favorite script?
Of the existing scripts?
Yes.
You know, I hadn't really thought of that. Well, the new magic line script is pretty fancy. That's a nice effect to have. I'd probably say that, or the stroke exposure, or the follow path tools. Those are all pretty nice to have. Not something you need all the time. Really, all your go-to tools, your manipulate bone tool, your translate point tool, those are the ones you use all the time in animating. The other tools, they're fancier for specific things, but you don't use them all the time like you use a good majority of your tools. So I couldn't really say I have a favorite of the native tools, but there's definitely some neat ones.
Okay, I have another question here, and it's basically with relation to the spheres that you had up a few seconds ago, and they wanted to know how you got the shading on the spheres.
Oops. Yeah, let me open that back up. Okay, the shading on the spheres, that's pretty simple. Let me select one, and I'll open up the styles window. I have it shaded with a dark shade toward the bottom right of the sphere, and then I have a drop shadow toward that same side, so that you can see it's shaded on this side, and then it has a drop shadow. The good thing about drop shadows is they will actually show on the shapes that are below the shape with the drop shadow. So here you can see this blue one, its drop shadow, since the blue is below the green ball, it doesn't show on the green, but the green drop shadow does show on the red. And that really helps pull off the fake 3D effect of doing that.
Very cool. Another participant asks, does Wes make a copy of the script under a new name before we edit the script?
Yes. If I was going to do a modification of an existing script, I would go ahead and change the name to, let's see, I would go ahead and change the name to the prefix I use. And everybody who writes script is asked to make their own prefix. As you can see, the native scripts all have the LM prefix for Lost Marble. That was the prefix Mike Clifton was using since Moho. As you can see, all my tools use the SYN, which, since I go on the forums, I'm since SYN 75. I just use SYN as my prefix. And for any tools I'm going to modify, I would definitely either change the prefix, or I'd add a _mod after the end of it, and make a copy of it. That way I don't, that way I still have the backup of the original tool. And actually, since I am a scripter, first thing I do when I install a new version or an update is I copy the scripts folder and name it scripts_backup, and then that allows me to add in my scripts and alter scripts how I see fit in the plain scripts folder. Scripts backup, anything that is not named where Anime Studio will recognize it, it ignores. So I have a temp folder of scripts I'm working on that I removed for this webinar, and then I have the backup of all the defaults set up for Anime Studio, just in case I ever need that, or I accidentally override or mess up a script. I can go into here, copy a script, and then paste it back into where I need it.
Perfect, thank you. There's another question by a participant. They would like to know what metadata is.
Metadata is just a fancy name for user-generated or tool-generated data that's being stored in the project file. Anime Studio has everything it normally stores in a project file, but then metadata was just added in 8.2 to allow scripters to store their own data for use with their tools and doing other things. So that's just basically a place for scripters to store their data.
Perfect. So we're very close to wrapping up. We have a few more minutes left. I just wanted to give everyone the heads up. I have a personal question that I'd like to ask Wes, and we'll see if there's some more questions we can answer in the next couple minutes, and then I'll ask Michi to pass the ball to me in that amount of time. So my question to you, Wes, is when did you actually get started with Anime Studio, and when did you decide to focus in on scripting?
I got started with Anime Studio about 5 years ago, I think. It was on Anime 5.4 that I got started with it. And I used it and used a lot of custom scripts that were on the LM forum for about a year or so. And then I decided there were enough ideas that I could see what people were doing with scripts and had ideas of my own as to what I could do with scripts to make my working in Anime Studio easier. So then I decided to try to start learning it. And at first I won't say it's terribly easy, but you take scripts that already exist in Anime Studio and you start seeing what they do, and most people start out by trying to copy and paste code from one script into another to see if they can't change things. It's not a learn it in a day process. Learning Lua, and I was completely new to programming. I never programmed anything before I started messing with Anime Studio scripting. I don't even know, I've never even done any serious HTML before. It's just a matter of trial and error. You go into it, you try something, see if that works. If not, you go in, change it, see if that works. When you're making scripts, you will have it to where you mess something up and Anime Studio either freezes or it crashes. That's to be expected when you're script writing. You're bound to do things on accident, like accidentally set up an infinite loop that Anime Studio can't, it just continues to loop and it just gets stuck and freezes, or do something else that causes it to crash. And usually you can go in and change what you've done or comment out code in order to try to isolate where the problem is.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Wes. And with that, we've reached our time limit, and I'd like to ask Michi to pass over the ball to me. I have a couple comments to make, and then that way we can get going here. So thank you very much to everyone for attending the webinar. I really appreciate your time, and thank you very much, Wes, for taking so much time out of your day to prepare in preparing for this webinar and actually providing all this insight on scripting. So the first thing I wanted to mention was that scripting, and a participant actually mentioned this as well, that Lua scripting is good for pretty much anything, and learning how to script is an important aspect of not just being an animator, but for one's personal satisfaction. So if you ever get a chance, it's an important tool to have underneath your belt. So once again, we wanted to thank you for your time. I wanted to mention that there's some scripts available on Content Paradise that you can check out, see if they fit your needs. Definitely check out Wes's scripts on the Animators Forum. They are available after you post 50 messages, and it's mighty kind of him to allow people to actually get all these scripts for free. And as well, this webinar is being recorded, and it should be available in approximately 1 week on our website. So you can check out our website in a week's time at anime.smithmicro.com/webinars.html. I wanted to thank once again Wes and everyone else for joining us. This was an extremely positive and effective webinar. Thank you.